We are looking at chapter number 3, which is poverty as a challenge. What we have discussed is that the poverty, there are certain groups which are vulnerable. Vulnerable, that means they are susceptible or they are poor and they will remain poor because of certain situations. So poverty among social groups and economic categories, it varies from different groups and different regions. Social vulnerable groups, these are the households of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, other backward classes. So economically vulnerable groups, they comprise, if you talk about rural areas, they can be landless labor households. If you go to urban areas, it can be casual labor households. But what we have seen in the few years, that all the groups except the scheduled tribe groups, this has witnessed a decline in poverty. So in the year 2011 and 12, the proportions, which is actually the survey carried out by NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, the situation is here that this is the social groups and economic categories, and this is the number of poor out of every 100% from the category. So here if you see that average Indian poverty ratio is 21.9, that is around 22. But if you go to scheduled tribe in the rural area, it is 45.3, which is way beyond, way ahead of the total Indian ratio. And this is followed by the agriculture laborers, then the casual laborers and the scheduled caste in rural areas. So what we see here, that the source reports of employment and unemployment among social groups in India by NSSO, that is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, you see there is a difference of the actual average of India and that of the vulnerable groups. So there is great difference within these poor families. What we observe here is that in poor, we have more poor, that is the poorest of poor. How? The female infants, the women and elderly members. Why they are poorest of the poor? Because they are not given equal access, equal resources, equal opportunity to gain the resources which are available to the family. So family also don't give these all the resources to this category, that is female infants, women and elderly members. That is why they are called poorest of the poor. Now we'll try to understand the story of Shivaraman, that is how these vulnerable groups, they are poor and they live the life of poverty. So the family of Shivaraman, he is a rural landless laborer and he has 8 members in the family. He and his wife, they both work. His children, they don't attend school just because of poverty. Only his son gets milk, and that also sometimes. And they find difficulty in managing even the 2 meals in a day, 2 time ki roti. So this story says or portrays the suffering of Shivaraman, who works as an agriculture laborer, that too for just 5 to 6 months in a year. So it's a seasonal work he gets. The sufferings and the inequality within the family of for women and children, they are even more. The girls are not sent to the school and even they don't get milk to drink, only the son gets. While the youngest child, who is son, he gets milk and sometimes he drinks sometimes. And his parents also plan for the education of the son. So this also shows the situation of the marginal classes, or you can say vulnerable classes, and the situation of the poorest of the poor in the family. We have different states. We have 28 states right now. So there are interstate disparities as far as the poverty is concerned. So the proportion of poor people is not same in every state. What recent estimates have shown us that while the all India this level, or you can say there is 21.9% poverty ratio, right, in 211-12, but that is around 22%. States like the MP, Madhya Pradesh, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, they had all, they are all below the poverty level. That means the poverty is too much in these places. So Bihar and Odisha, these two states, they continue to be the poorest state, and the poverty ratio is in Bihar is 33.7 and in Odisha it is 37.6. So this is changing. So this is just to give you an idea. Along with the rural poverty, the urban poverty is also high in Odisha. That is, you will find poor even in the rural areas as well as in the urban areas. Madhya Pradesh, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, in states like Kerala and Jammu Kashmir, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, West Bengal, there is a significant decline what we see in poverty. So there is an improvement in the poverty level. The states successful in reducing poverty, they have adopted different methods. So what are these methods? That certain states are doing well, and Bihar, Odisha like states, they are not doing so well as far as poverty is concerned. So Punjab and Haryana, they had high agriculture growth rates due to the effect of the green revolution, that is the Harit Kranti. And Kerala has developed its human resource by investing more on education. So Kerala is all about education. West Bengal has reduced poverty by implementing the land reform. So they did all the land reforms. Public distribution of food grains at subsidized rate in the southern states, especially we will talk about the Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. This has helped in poverty reduction, and mostly the cooperatives, the public distribution system in Tamil Nadu is mostly in the hand of this cooperative society. Jammu and Kashmir has generated wide-ranging economic activities all across the state, and it has actually converted potential in various sectors into employment opportunities. So this is the poverty ratio in selected Indian state. This is the idea you can have from 1999 2000, and still Odisha is topping it. Bihar is the second one, and if you see here, Kerala, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, they are at very good place. That means as far as poverty is concerned, they are doing well. But we need to consider and we need to understand that Odisha, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, etc., they need a lot of effort from us and the government. So these are some selected countries. Let me show you the outside, means the global scenario. Nigeria, 64 people out of 100, they are poor. And followed by Bangladesh, and now India. India is not doing so well, but still we are growing economy. So we think that we are going to go way ahead to remove this poverty. So this is what I was talking about, the global poverty scenario. And although extreme economic poverty, which we see here, is reduced in the world from 43% to 22% in from 1990 to 2008. This is the World Bank records. But still, there are vast regional differences also in different countries. So the proportion of people living under poverty in different countries, it is defined by the International Poverty Line, and as I said, it is $1.25 per day. In Southeast Asia and China, there is a decline in poverty because of the rapid economic growth and massive investment in HR, that is human resource development. If you go to Latin America and Caribbean, the poverty ratio has changed significantly since 1981. And in sub-Sahara Africa, poverty actually has increased, right, since 1981 due to the successive droughts, and there are various other climatic reasons. But it declined from 51% in 1981 to 47% in 2008. So economic growth in what is this? It is a term which defines an increase in the real output of a country. So as I just indicated you, if you talk about 1.25, Nigeria is having the poorest people among the world. So the Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations, which is formulated in the year 2000, this calls for reducing the proportion of people living that is less than $1.25 a day to half in the 1990 by 2015. That is the goal of United Nations. So these are the graphs and pictures showing that how this China control the poverty, how other countries control the poverty. So now we need to understand, after knowing all these ACLA and statistics, that what are the causes of poverty. Poverty occurs because of various reasons. If we talk about India, then historically there was a low level of economic development when we were under British colonial administration prior to 1947. Because we had very good traditional handicrafts and industrial development, So they discouraged, their policy discouraged, and thereby reducing job opportunities and income growth. So the low level of economic development, it persisted even after independence. And because of the population increase, per capita income growth was low, and this incremented the poverty. Then the Green Revolution improved the opportunities in agriculture, but only in certain regions like Punjab, Haryana, etc. The growth of the population increased the number of job seekers who had to contend with low paying jobs in urban areas, and this also leads to poverty, which is spreading to towns and cities now. There are traditions also, like socio-cultural and economic factors led to extra expenditure, which ultimately increased poverty. That is, people spend more on a girl marriage than educating her. There is an unequal distribution of land and other resources. That is why there are large income inequalities. So if you see, the 60% wealth of India is only with 1% of the total population. So there is an unequal distribution. The land reforms have not been properly implemented, and also the land resource, because it is not adequate, this is also a reason for many people to be poor. Small farmers, they borrow money for seeds, fertilizers and pesticides, and later on fail to pay lending in debt. They fall in debt trap. That is, they take money and they can't return. So for returning, they again take loan. So this high level of indebtedness is both because of poverty and effect of poverty. So the second thing, the question we should ask ourselves is, what are the anti-poverty measures? So removal of poverty has been one of the major objectives of Indian development strategy, and Indian government main key objective is this. So the current anti-poverty strategy of the government is based on certain objectives. First is the promotion of economic growth. That is, the government has promoted economic growth during last many years. Economic growth was low till 1980s, but after that it increased significantly. Since then, it is causing significant poverty reduction. So the poverty is reducing. The high economic growth helps in a significant reduction of poverty. So there is a strong linkage between the economic growth and poverty reduction. If economy grows, poverty will be reduced. Economic growth widens opportunities and provides the resources needed to invest in human development. High economic growth encourages people to send their children, including their girl child, to school, and the hope is for better economic returns from investing in the education of the children. And the advantage of economic growth, it may not be so direct. The proof may not be direct. Due to lack of growth in agriculture sector, the large number of people remain still poor in rural areas. So we have some targeted anti-poverty programs, and let me just give you a glimpse of this, because these are the things which are generally asked. First of all, we have Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana, PMRY. It was initiated in year 1993, and the target group was, because of the Rozgar and unemployment and employment, the target group is unemployed youth in rural areas and small towns. And the significant feature is setting up of self-employment ventures through industry, service and business routes. Then in 1995, we had REGP, Rural Employment Generation Program, again for unemployed. And the idea was to generate employment in rural areas and to develop entrepreneurial skills and attitude among rural unemployed youth. Then SGSY, that is the Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana, 1999, and this was targeted to poor families in rural areas. And this was to organize SSG, self-help groups, providing the skill development opportunities, credit linkages and subsidies, and also creating of marketing opportunities for products. This scheme is now known as NRLM, National Rural Livelihood Mission. In 2000, we have Pradhan Mantri Gramoday Yojana, PMGY, for rural areas in the state. And it achieves sustainable human development. The idea was at the village level by providing central assistance to state and union territories for certain basic minimum services like the primary health, primary education, shelter, drinking water, electrification and nutrition. In 2000 only, Antodaya Anna Yojana for poor families in urban and rural areas. So this is to ensure the food security to the poorest of the poor by providing food grains at very highly subsidized rate, 1 or 2 rupees or 2 or 3 rupees per kg. for wheat, rice, etc. NFWP, National Food for Work program in 2004. This is targeted to poor people in rural areas of 150 most backward districts. And the idea was to generate supplementary wage employment and providing food security in these districts. And then after it was subsumed by NREGA. Then comes the MNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So this is not a yojana, this is a proper act. In 2005, and this was targeted to rural households. And the idea was to enhance the livelihood security of people in rural areas by guaranteeing them 100 days of wage employment in financial year to a rural household whose adult member volunteers to do unskilled manual work. So we have very good statistics of this. So many people were targeted. So scheme provided employment to 220 crore person days of employment. So the share of SC/ST women are 23%, 17%, and 53% in this scheme. So the average was 132 in 2013-14. So the government introduced targeted anti-poverty starting from 1990 as we see. The result of this program is quite mixed because the problem is there can be a policy, but its implementation and targeting should be bang on. It should be proper. Some schemes they overlap and the benefits of these schemes are not fully reaching to the deserving people or poor. So the now government is doing what? It is emphasizing more on proper monitoring of these programs. Millennial Development Goals. These are 8 international development goals that are officially established following the Millennial Summit of United Nations in 2000, following the adoption of United Nations of Millennium Declaration. So one of these was to reduce 50% the proportion of poor or people living on less than $1.25, let us make it 1.25 a day by the year 2015. So the challenges we have in front of us for poverty reduction is still a major challenge in India, and because of differences in rural and urban setups. Poverty should include not only the matter of adequate amount of food, but there are other factors like education, healthcare, shelter, job security, gender equality, dignity, and so on. So this gives us the concept of human poverty. Poverty reduction is expected to be lower in next coming years, 10 to 15 years. So in addition to this anti-poverty measures, the government is focusing and should focus on the reduction of poverty of how the process will be. High economic growth we want, universal free elementary education we want, and the decrease in population growth is required, and the empowerment of women and weaker sections is required. So what we saw is that the poverty line or the poverty is considered to be person who is not having money. But there are certain things which we imbibe, that is, which are like social you can say bahishkaran or upavarjan, or the person is not given proper opportunities, or a human being or a citizen is not given proper, say, government policy, you can say the end point. So all these add up to the poverty. So now the thing is, whatever is being done is very good, and whatever is going to be done or needs to be done, it should be properly planned and it should be properly implemented to actually eradicate the poverty of the country. So this is all about this chapter. Thank you so much and take care of yourself.